I'd like to call to order the school committee meeting of Tuesday, May 16th. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. I'd like to open it up for comments from the public. Is there anybody here who'd wish to address the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and discussions of issues of interest. And I'd ask the school committee members if we could move to the front row. Mr. Horton is going to come up and present to us the Nctm trip to San Antonio. I'm going to bring my water.
Does that do it, Michael? Sure. It's really just the first line. Okay. Good evening. My name is Michael Horton. I am the Director of Curriculum and Assessment for STEM here at the Nantucket Public Schools. And just about a month ago, early April, I had the pleasure of traveling to San Antonio, Texas for the annual Nctm, which is the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics conference. Joining me tonight is third grade teacher Rosemary Topham and third grade teacher Claire Latter. Jeannie Critchley, fourth grade teacher, also joined us on the trip but could not make it tonight. So a quick overview, 68th annual meeting, lots of sessions, a gigantic exhibit hall of publishers and new cool stuff and dice and dominoes and spinners and cards, a lot of technology. And then basically when it's kind of a freestyle cruising event, you don't need to buy tickets, you don't need to register for sessions, you go whatever fits your interests. There's lots of mini descriptions. Sometimes there'll be a burst that's usually a 30-minute kind of powwow of best practices and ideas. Sometimes those sessions are a little sales pitchy because they might be sponsored by a vendor or a publisher. Sessions are kind of typical of this type of environment, lecture style, where a person will get up and just basically talk about their research or talk about latest techniques in math classrooms. And then I always encourage participants to attend as many workshops as possible. You always know you made a good decision when you walk in the room and it's set up in round tables and there's free stuff in the center of the tables. It means you're going to be doing things, you're going to be interacting. It's just a greater model of learning, and you're going to be walking away with like stuff to take back to your classroom and try out. So I introduced our team. 2 years ago when Nctm was in Boston, we were able to send one person from each grade level, K through high school. Last year, we looked at data and decided to focus on grades 3 and 4. So last year, a team along with Mr. Kozer and myself went to San Francisco, and it was grade 3 teachers and grade 4 teachers. So this year, Mr. Kozer and I said, you know what, let's round out grade 3 and 4. Let's make sure anyone who did not go to San Francisco had the opportunity to go this year. So that's how we ended up with another third grade, fourth grade focus. The plan for the future may be to move up into grades 5 and 6 or look at K1-2. Haven't quite decided that yet, but we can't quite afford to send to Texas and San Francisco, New Orleans, a team of 12 like we did to Boston because it's much closer. So we've kind of narrowed our team. And I just want to say that when there's 4 of us, it's really easy to get dinner reservations and to get tables quickly. And we basically did just about everything together. Okay, we attended some sessions together. We had all meals together. We obviously traveled together. So there's a certain nice element of collegiality with a team of this size, which I really enjoyed this year. So just taking a step backwards from last year, we presented with the San Francisco group a few of our major takeaways here about fact fluency, challenging students, making sure teachers are focusing on the standards for math practice, not just the content and the material, but getting them to talk about math, to argue their thinking, to support their thinking, to use tools, to tend to precision, to persevere, use stamina to make it through longer, more rigorous problems. Getting to know your students, making it real life applicable. Students, especially in the upper grades, will always ask, why do we need to know this? Why is this important? You always better have an answer to that question. And then towards the end, also don't forget about the other aspects of education, but the parents, community members, and looking at data that we can learn a lot. It's not to completely criticize and make people feel awful, but to say, you know what, we're in this together, what can we do to make things better? I just mentioned math practices. There are 8 of them. They're called the SMPs, or the Standards of Math Practice. A variety of skills in addition to content knowledge. I think I remember most of them off the top of my head, but you see using models, look for and make use of structure, look at patterns, something that is a big component of the Common Core state standards. So at this point, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Rosemary and Claire, and then I'm going to wrap things up at the end for the summarizing slide.
Thanks. So, sorry, I'm really short. So for, basically we were 3rd and 4th grade teachers, and we really thought that fractions was a great jumping point, and we focused mainly on fractions when we were at the conference. Focused on how to help the struggling learners with fractions, how to excel with the ones that are excelling, increase ownership of what a fraction is, to do more than just what's on the number line, and how it's important, but it's not the only way of doing fractions. Okay. So we went to our first thing that we all went to together, Rosemary, Jeannie, and myself. We went to one that was more about making creatures. It was making these little things, and it had special rules. First she gave you a bag, and you got to do whatever you wanted to, and then she brought out all these rules. Well, 1/3 of your creature had to be this, and 1/3 had to be hexagons, and then we started making it, and it was a lot of fun. And this is the one that we made. It's a lovely picture from Texas. And then we had to make them. Sorry, I have my notes still. And then give them the number of pieces that are used. Start with just making a creature. Have them name the pieces even. Some of them still don't know all their numbers and shapes and things. So they all had that. Do you want something to add to that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, they did all of that. It was actually our first one that we went to. It was a woman who she was presenting, and it wasn't this one, and she was calling, she had a number line, and she was saying it was 2 6s.
Oh, yes.
And 3 6s, and we all looked at each other and said, no, they're not 6s, they're 6. So we ended up leaving it and going to this one.
Sorry.
And
forgot that part.
so we just decided that maybe that wasn't really worth our time. So when we went to this one, it was really interesting, though, because we all had conversations about our students. Jeannie's kids I taught in 1st grade, Claire had them in 3rd, and so we were able to think about the fact of their teaching of equivalent fractions over the past, and how you could take this and really get them more engaged into learning fractions. So we thought this was good.
They started off with number line learning was the main focus, and then she moved into, well, if you want to be more concrete, you can do this, and it's more of a interesting and fun tactic for students. I haven't tried it yet. I'm not sure if you tried it.
No, not yet. No,
there's some other ones that we've tried.
So this was another, a different conference on fractions. Again, 1st year and 3rd grade, I was a little worried about teaching them. So the presenter just gave us a simple grid and said, count up how many squares. What would your fractions be? Could you do it and have equal fractions? Could you have equivalent fractions? And so the idea of this was really to give the kids the opportunity just to think about it, not for us to teach them and say, this is what I want you to do, and this is how I want you to break it down. And the majority of the conferences we went to, really it was about us stopping as teachers. Don't talk, let them figure out and explore it. So it was interesting too, because what was really cool about this presenter was that they could go around, snap a photo, and it quickly went up onto the board. So we were really liking that projection, and we were thinking that that would be kind of cool too, to see how we can incorporate that into our classroom, as opposed to saying, okay, everybody come over here and look at this table, or everybody that, but it was, we
It's a
thought it was
great use of
interesting.
technology. She also, or I was actually a guy, he had money, as you can see on the corner, and you had to divide your money between the people equally. Well, that didn't work out because we had, what, 8 people at our table, and we had like $7
Yes.
or something. So we had to figure out, well, what were we going to do to make it equal? Or some people are just not going to have any money. Or
And he also said, you know, here you go, and he gave Smarties. You have 3 packages, everybody gets how many? Figure it out, what's your fraction? How do you do it? A different way, so that they can see that fractions are not just what we teach in a book, that they can look at it in the everyday. This is you.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
helpful.
To be less helpful, that was like my big takeaway. Word problems often have numbers, and the person that was presenting was saying they're like little number pluckers. They just flick out the numbers and they're like, okay, well, I can subtract with these, so I'm just going to do that. And they don't even read the word problem. So we were talking about, like, how are we going to fix that, and what can we do? Some students will just add. So, for example, we came up with this, Claire. Claire had 52 bananas and bought some more. She ended up with 76 bananas. How many did she buy? Well, if you're just a number plucker, you're just going to pick them together. We decided that we were going to figure out how we we're going to do that and have the kids not tell them, right? Have them discuss and figure out what is the question actually asking you to do. Don't just click out the numbers. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You need to figure it out, because I
Yeah.
find a lot of times we just want to move on or figure out, like, okay, well, that's what you're going to do. And you want the kids to struggle, but not to a point where they're super frustrated.
Yeah. And it was interesting, because what they ended up doing with a problem like this was the presenter then covered up all the numbers and just said, how many bananas did they have? And so then you're taking away the numbers, and they have to figure it out. How could they do that? And you're kind of getting them a little bit more involved in it. 3-act task.
3-act task. This is something that I actually did in my classroom after we came back. What is his name?
Graham Fletcher.
Thank you. Graham Fletcher's 3-act task. We went to, all of us, every single one of us that went to the conference went to this, and it was amazing. It was great to see. He had these snippets of videos, and you can go onto his website and you can click them and show, and it says divided between like K through 7,
Yeah.
6th or 7th grade. And it's down here, you can't really see it. I was hoping to show you, but if you click on it, this one that says Bright Idea, this one that I did, and it's basically an empty light bulb, and it's the one that we saw at the conference with this, and it drops in some Skittles. So all of a sudden, they're asking, like, well, what do you notice first? You know, some kids, what did they say? Say, he has hairy arms. He's
got a
wearing a
ring.
watch. It said 7:07 on his watch, whatever it said. And then you bring it more into, well, we're going to be estimating, right?
Yeah. So the Skittles got dropped down by color. So all you saw was a bunch of Skittles getting put, purple, yellow, green. And then he just asked the question, like, how could you figure out how many are in there? Could you estimate? What would the fraction be? So it was, but he did a lot of just a simple question and then left it to their own devices for them to
And-
figure out.
And then, so when I did it, what we talked about what estimating was first, of course. How many of you thought that there was,
22.
10 Skittles in it? How many thought 20? How many thought so on? And, there's the one child that's lonely and says 75 or whatever they thought was in it. What was there at the end, 100 and something? 122. Everybody thought at the beginning there was
90. There was like 90.
There was like 20 in it. I, myself included, thought there was like 50 something.
Yeah. I think it's pretty cool if you get a chance to click on the link that we included, because you then get a really good sense of the fact of, wow, because we even sat there and did it, and I was like, well, there's going to be, like maybe 12 of the first one and then 10. And so you're doing that. But it was surprising that the number was 90. you know, and that everyone was surprised that that many Skittles fit in the light bulb.
And then it was identifying like the missing numbers and what could you do to find out how many were actually there. And then it was, what questions do you have still, or what questions could you come up with that surround that? So it was more engaging for the students. They really, my kids loved it. They asked to do another one, but I happened to be out the next day, and then it was MCAS.
So one of the big things that we took away was that games are key. The more exploring you can do, the better, but also allow them time to discuss. So I went to this conference called I Think, and as you can see, it's listed there. It was sort of set as far as a struggling mathematician. And so I wanted to go in and see how could you take that. But really the whole part of it is individually think of the problem. Don't just jump in as a teacher and say, this is what you have to do. You have to step back and say, what do you think? Figure it out. Can you talk about it with somebody? If you got the answer, could you get it another way? So a lot of it was just exploring numbers, hands-on, and more conversation. It really is about us just
led by the students,
walking away and letting them figure that out. And then this was something I took away. So the woman came from Canada and did this presentation, and she was just using these circles for different ways. She was doing whole numbers. I used it, as you can see, for fractions. So the center was what one whole equaled, and then the kids had to figure out what the fraction would be. How are you going to take that one group of 10, or that one object that I gave you, and split it into what's two wholes, what's one and a half, what's two, what's 0, so that they really have a sense of applying what they've learned about fractions. So I had a video, but I can't get it to work. But it was a whole conversation because I have a number of children in my class who are doing middle school math. And so we were talking about how could you do a fraction if you couldn't divide it evenly? What would your remainder be? How could you figure that out? What would be the way that you could then take that? So a lot of this or the activity that Claire did, you can differentiate it for all the kids. My kids who were struggling mathematicians, they had to divide 4. What's the fraction of 4? How can you do that? So you can take an activity like this and walk away, see how they do it, and then let them come back.
So I hope it comes through like how excited teachers can get about math because kids pick up on it. And that's been one of our key focus areas at the elementary school, is making math fun. We can learn about fractions, but it's more than just 1/3 on a number line, or like we said, like in a book. It can be Skittles and light bulbs and marbles rolling off chairs and things like that. So for the first time in the last couple of years, I attended sessions more geared to district level administration opposed to 3, 4, 5 administration. But everywhere I went, I still saw that same theme of making math fun, puzzles, games, activities, making it real, making it applicable, making it tangible. Another thing I saw was that compared to last year, it's amazing how there's more and more science as part of this conference. It's really no longer just a math conference. There are a lot of sessions that would incorporate science into a math lesson or vice versa. So there were a few STEM sessions that I attended that were great, and they really jumped into project-based learning. I knew I was in the right room if I sat down at a round table and someone said, oh, do you have project-based learning at your school? And then the next session I went to, oh, do you have project-based projects at your school? So it was really neat because a lot of schools are jumping on, okay, how can we make math and science work together, but also make it interesting and fun for the students, not just at the 3rd grade level, but as it gets more complicated and complex in the middle and high school level. Technology, as you can imagine, is just everywhere. But even relative to last year, it's exponential. It was one of those things where it's not a question of whether you're using technology, but what app do you have in your classroom? What website? It's not just IXL, okay, or ST Math, but there are so many things out there because all these vendors and publishers and tech-savvy creators and designers are jumping on board that students are pulled in to learning through technology. So it just saw it just about every single conference and session I went to, and there also just happened to be a robotics competition going on in the neighboring exhibit hall, which was pretty cool. Then personally, my biggest takeaway is a session that was called Parent University. It's really not a new idea, but it gave me a bunch of practical things that I can do next year at Nantucket Elementary School. We've all heard parents who say, this is not the way I was taught math, or this is the new math, or this is the fuzzy math, or I don't get it, I cannot help my kid, even though it's still the same math. It's just a different approach. It's visual, it's through activities, it's through games. There might be some new language here and there. So a lot of schools are starting to move towards not just educating students, but educating parents. And the idea that I'm bringing back here is that we spend our Title I funds for after-school tutoring from 2:30 to 4 o'clock a couple days a week. Well, we could move that to evening from like 5 to 6 or 5:30 to 6:30. Get someone in the island community to donate some pizzas or get a volume discount of some type and provide food for families. And while the students are learning from one teacher or two teachers, down the hall, there are parents learning from one or two other teachers. And the parents are basically being educated with what their kids are going to be experiencing the next week, okay? They actually go through the lesson, they're given the vocabulary, they have discussions about how it's the same exact math as how they were taught, it's just in a different presentation or a more visual application. So I thought that was really neat, and that's something that's really practical that Mr. Kozart's hearing about this probably for the first time. So if something we can roll forward to next year, I was kind of looking at using our Title I funds a little bit differently, okay? Really neat idea. You even give t-shirts, and you can have college sweatshirts, and you can name it whatever you want, and parents get a certificate at the end that they graduated from Parent University for whatever application or math concept that they're learning, and the food is what really brings people in. Okay, and it just works. And I think I put a lot of that down there in the bottom that I just described, but I'm obviously pretty excited about it. Any other last minute things that we wanted to share that you might have missed?
Your technology manga high. Rosemary's actually been
So
using that.
when we came back, Mike had earned or won a subscription to it. So I quickly got my kids on it. My kids do ST Math every day for the 20 minutes. But they all have a login, and so now at the end of the day, when they have free time, can I go on Mega High? So what ends up happening is you start off at an easy level, and then you answer those questions correctly. You go up to a medium, and then you go up to a high, and then you go up to a very high or an extreme. And for every level you finish, you get a badge. Very rarely do you get a gold badge. I'm proud to say I've got a few who got them, but my kids love to go on it. And so I can track it and look who's got a red dot because they didn't understand the concept, who got a green dot. From a little further exploring, my red dots are because they didn't like the game and they shut out. So, but it's just a fun way of them doing math, as opposed to GG, which is ST Math, that there's no real explanation. They're all sitting around each other going, I'm going to do flower power, you do flower power, and oh, I got it. And so they're kind of competing within themselves, but it gives me information too on how they know, how are they on their multiplication facts, division, and those kinds of things. So for my kids, it's something after you're done with everything, but they log onto it at home and I can track it all. So I think that's a really good resource. I don't have experience with IXL, so I can't compare it to that, but I'm hopeful that next year we'll be able to have that for the NIS. Questions?
Questions?
I kind of want to say thank you for that. I think it's important that the kids see the excitement in teachers because it makes them excited and it takes away the humdrum of learning anything in school. And these days it's very important. I was wondering if we can go back to the next to the last slide.
Oops.
The one with the popsicle sticks.
Yes.
Are they right? I'm just curious.
They're getting there, so they're getting there. What you have to understand is, so my phone is acting some ways, and so.
I think that's a 4.
No, but so what it was then we ended up having a conversation which is why that was the video that was going to link to it, and it didn't link to it.
I know the zero's right.
Yeah. But so they had to think about it, and that was the way, is that some of the kids saw this as one, and some of the kids, so we ended up having a whole conversation. So like I said, it was going to be with the video, and it just didn't work out that way. But, so yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
They're getting there, though.
They're getting there. I just forgot to say that. That was not the final project.
Jen? No, thank you very much for presenting tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I just wanted to ask, Mike, do you keep in touch with teachers about some of the resources or technology? Like, are vendors or people sort of in touch with you, and you help disseminate information about some technology that's available for classroom teachers?
Yes, I try to act like a filter because I get bombarded.
I'm sure.
So I don't want to inundate teachers who are busy with so many of the, concrete things each day.
Yeah.
But I think it was just recently I emailed principals about Discovery Education, which is something that elementary school has, and it's got good reviews, and I think it's a decent application that middle school, high school could jump on. So that's definitely one of my roles as a district STEM coordinator. But you can imagine, it's not quite junk mail, but it's bordering on junk mail that I receive on a regular basis.
Right, great. I was just sitting here imagining the overwhelming or inundated amount of information, and if you're, say, in 3rd grade and you're trying to get it out to your peers, it must be overwhelming, so I'm happy to hear that. And then I just wanted to go back to the student-led discussion, and I think Rosemary said, like, teachers step back and let them have the conversation. Just from maybe a more practical or more old school standpoint, and what are some of the ways in which you make sure that the conversations stay on track and or that they're getting the answer?
So if you looked at that slide, I went over and I asked the kids, so are you right? And then there was one child who just kind of sat there, and I was like, you're not saying anything, what's going on? And so you could see his brain, and he's like, it's wrong. And I'm like, well, why is it wrong? But he was in a group, and so he had to convince the other people. So if you go back to the way that we learned, at least from what I remember, we sat down at a desk, here's your math, this is the way you're teaching it, you're going to learn it, and if you don't get it, I'm sorry, too bad. Whereas a lot of it now is just explain it to me. Think about it. What are your parts? What are your, if you can't explain math, you can't comprehend it, and therefore, where are you at? So with my kids, they have to be able to explain their thinking. And if they don't understand something, they need to be specific about what don't you understand. Do you not understand how to take something and break it into a fraction? Do you not understand what an equivalent is? So, and then I find, especially now in 3rd grade, that the kids are really good at explaining it to each other. So, like I said, I have children who are at a much higher level. And so they go in and say, well, when I learned fractions and I was 5, this is the way it was explained to me. So that kind of allows them to better understand it.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you very much,
Thank you for
everyone.
going.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for supporting
Thanks for
us
sending us.
once again.
Oh, sorry, that's mine. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So Sheila, we'd love to invite you to come up to this seat right here, and we'll have a special education update from our interim director of special needs, Sheila Riordan.
I'm following along in the idea of math. I have given you a lot of data. On page 2, I kept basically with the format that Nancy Miller had done in the past, except that I went for 3 years to show the increase of the students with disabilities in the district. And it really, overall, it really hasn't increased. The very first one, we're up to 15.3% of the students have an IEP. But the IEP isn't always for academic reasons. It could be just speech, just occupational therapy. It could be all 3. It could just be academic. So, but this is every student in the district, and that's a pretty good number, 15.3. The state would say it was a good number. The high school, as you can see, has the most students on IEPs, but they're coming up from the elementary, in the middle, and then they come into the high school. The exploding population, to me, looking at these numbers, is the pre-K. I mean, 2 years ago, you had 10 students on IEPs, and today there are 31 in 2 short years. And the referrals are still coming in, because we do start when they're 3 years old. 504s, a little bit increase in some areas, but it's students who don't necessarily qualify for IEPs. They have ADD, they have some kind of a medical condition, and an IEP is not appropriate, but they're getting what they need through their accommodations or modifications. So that is pretty consistent here too. And we always say that a 504 is not a runner-up to an IEP. This is giving kids what they need. And we often see a lot of students in high school, the parents are looking for 504s to give them extra times on the ACT, the SAT, and to carry them on. If we look at the evaluations, we've had a lot of evaluations this year, and I've only been here since the end of November. They've been coming in right now fast and furious. We had 6 already this week of new referrals, and they're not necessarily from the teachers, they are also from parents who might have some concerns. But if you look at the numbers, 26 were completed and eligible, but 21 were not eligible. So it's almost a 50-50 mix of students who are being evaluated that are qualifying for special education. So, and I don't know about the last 57, but that's a lot of evaluations.
Sheila, can I just ask for you to explain for us and maybe for those who are at home watching, just a simplified version of the evaluation process? If I'm a parent, I come to my classroom teacher or
the guidance counselor, and you give them a letter, and you just very simply, because anybody can refer a child, you state that you would like an evaluation for your child, what you can put what you're looking for, what your concerns are, and as soon as we get it, we have a couple of days to respond to it. We send out to the parents to their rights as a parent, the procedural safeguards. They sign permissions. We have 30 school days to get the testing done, and then another 15 to hold the meeting. So the whole process is 45 school days, and it should never go over that, unless somebody, a child's out sick or they've been on vacation. But we have 30 school days to get everything done for that child. And then a team meeting is held at the school by the 45th day, and everybody sits around and presents their evaluation results, and we have a flow chart, and we see if they qualify or not for special education.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
The evaluations by school, you can see that they're up again. That number is also up again for the whole school, for the school year. NES had a big jump, but a lot of times with your RTI model, teachers really work with the kids and put interventions in place, and then you get to 3rd grade and you think that we need a little bit more, we need specialized instruction. So that's where we get the more evaluations by 3rd and 4th grade. This year we did 7 non-public schools, so it'll be from Lighthouse and the new school. And then every 3 years, every child has to be reevaluated. You asked about the process, and it starts all over again. It's as though it's initial referral, all the permissions, everything goes out. And we had 72 this year.
Wow.
And so for a total of 183 evaluations this school year, which is a good number. Summer school's all set. It's going to start July 10th through August 10th. I'm really impressed. They've got all their staff in place. Everything is finding staff anywhere in summer school is tough, and particularly here. So everything is in place and ready to go on July 10th. The special needs students participated in Special Olympics on April 27th. They went over to Mashpee. They had a wonderful time, and some of the gen ed students went as they know them, and they went as helpers. And I understand it was, and I've seen the pictures, and it was very heartwarming from each helping each other. The Parent Advisory Council meets the third Wednesday of every month, which is tomorrow night, if anybody wants to come, at 6 o'clock here at the high school. And I've just listed out some of the professional development and some of the consultants that we work with. The consultants also provide professional development in the district. They might be here to, like the BCBA, but he will also often work in time to do a professional development session with the teachers at the end of the day on Board Maker or something of that nature to help. So we have the same people coming in regularly. It's not a one and done type thing. And just in general, the programs that are here in the district.
Great. I will ask the committee if anyone has any questions or comments.
Just have a quick question. I noticed that the age is from 3 to 22. In order to reach the age of 22, the student would have been a student before that?
Yes, you cannot have graduated from high school. So those are usually the students in our sub-separate IDSC programs that don't receive a diploma. But if you've received your high school diploma, services are done.
Excellent. Tim, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to go around the table. Do you have any comments or questions?
What about kids, for example, that come in to the high school that are not speaking English? Do they fall into this purview? I mean, where do those kids end up?
With ELL, with the ELL program.
You come in at ELL, and if you're spending 2 hours a day on ELL, I mean, you can't really deal with an academic program, and then all of a sudden they sort of age out and they don't graduate.
And then they oftentimes do go into special education because they have a lot of missing skills and they have learning disabilities. They have a lot of learning needs. So, and as you know, you have to pass the MCAS in order to get that diploma. So some of them do end up in special education, but you have to try to test them in their native language also.
Do we do evaluations in the
Yes,
native
a few,
language?
yes. Yes.
We're actually, I think we've probably improved in that arena in the last few years. With hiring of some staff, Kathy Bruno, who's a speech language pathologist,
Yes.
I think, and she speaks Spanish and administers some in Spanish. We've talked about this before. In the beginning, you're trying to determine for those children who speak another language, whether it's the language or whether it's a disability. And that takes a little while to work through. I would say increasingly, though, we're getting some kids who don't speak English, and we know immediately that it's greater than just the ability to speak English, who have major gaps in their education, even in, we received a student a couple weeks ago, I think, who was from, I think, Central America, who didn't speak English, but also wasn't fluent in Spanish. And with some significant gaps. So those kids are coming into school systems all across America, and we are trying to find the staff that can evaluate them. It's easier in some areas than others. We don't have a bilingual psychologist. That would be something that would be great. And we're always on the lookout for people who have, more than one language.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, thank you. I am a huge proponent of the summer school program. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many students are enrolled?
Mr. Horton, how many are?
Enrolled, I don't know yet because we're still collecting forms.
Yep.
They were due about a week and a half ago. So I know Andrew's been busy emailing, calling parents for those forms. But roughly, we're going to be around 100 students is what we are.
Is that K through 12?
Yeah, there's approximately 8 to 14 at each grade level, but high school might only have one section.
But again, there are lots of different summer programs. So we have the summer programs for extended school year for children who have been identified with special needs. You have summer school for the Title, III and Title I children. We have some middle school programs, and I think Jeremiah told me the other day that it looks like we have some students enrolled at the high school for the ELL programs as well. So we're always trying to expand. And another thing that we're doing this year is a program for math to help students bridge from the middle to the high school in math. And this will be the first year for that. So I think our summer programs have expanded and will continue to expand. And I would like someday for us to offer programs for acceleration. We haven't done that yet.
I was actually thinking about that when we were listening to Rosemary, and when she was talking about how some of her students were teaching, the other students, and I know that's a concept widely used, the peer tutoring and mentoring, and I'm wondering if that's something we should or could look at, even because I think no matter what, getting those kids into the school during the long summer break that we have, even if they're familiar with the math and they know the math, to have them in working with their peers would be an advantage.
Yep.
Something to consider.
Great. Thank you. Pauline?
Just a couple of questions. Thank you. I know when Nancy Miller last presented, I asked a question on the transition between early intervention and coming into preschool. And I know we have high numbers in our EI, we used to anyway, historically. How do you think we do as far as transitioning into the pre-K, as far as
From like an early intervention? I think you do a very nice job. I haven't spent as much time there, but I have been in Kim's room and Jody's room in the pre-K. But they have a nice program there, and they get the kids ready for, kindergarten. It's really what it is.
Do they undergo another evaluation?
Yes, they do.
As part of that transition?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And so you'd say that those numbers are you probably see a little bit of a growth, do you?
You do, a little bit, yes. And some parents, unfortunately, don't enroll them in early intervention. I mean, not intervention, the pre-K program. So you're not even getting all of them, no matter how much child find and outreach that you do. That not everybody does enroll their children, and some could benefit from it. I had an occupational therapist tell me that, as a physical therapist, that in some countries it's a culture, because we always think you should be crawling before you walk. I mean, that's just a regular thing, right, Dr. Lippery? But in some countries, because they figure the ground is dirty, so we get kids in who have never even experienced that. And they don't know how to hold a crayon. They haven't done any of that, and they're, loved and nurtured and babied, but they don't have the skills that other children have coming into the pre-K. So they spend a lot of time really preparing, real pre-K.
Well, I know we have very strong outreach, and
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that we see an increase in the pre-K to NES numbers, because I would imagine that would be a natural, that we would capture more kids coming in.
Yes.
I'm just trying to look at these numbers, and I'm just looking at them tonight for the first time. So could you just help me on what do you think is the spike in numbers? If I'm looking at May 2016 for NES at 27, the evaluations by school. But if I look at May 2016 with students with disabilities, the number is 70. So does that tell me that 27 new students during this year got evaluated?
Not necessarily. There's just
70.
It just added to the number that was there. There were 70 last year, and then they went
And 70
on.
this year.
Yeah, and some are dismissed. That they do reach their goals, they are ready to move on without any services. And as I said, it's not always academic. It could just be speech, it could be occupational therapy, physical therapy. So it's the whole group of students with IEPs.
I think you also have to be careful as you look at those numbers, because every year you roll a group forward. So the fifth graders who showed up under NES are, in the following year. So it depends on, you could have a large number in a particular grade level as well.
Right, I mean, they looked large to me, from 14 to 79 and 16 to 50, so I was just trying to understand what the story was behind those numbers. And then, just another question with our reading programs. I know we have staff, or we used to have staff that were certified in certain reading programs, like Wharton, Gillingham, and Wilson. Do we group students who we've identified would benefit best by a particular program? Do we group them with a teacher that's certified for that program, or are the students sort of going with their special ed teachers per grade?
They would go to that person for the Wharton Gillingham, it'd be pull-out.
Oh, good.
Wharton Gillingham or Wilson.
Or Wilson, or
because
whatever
they'd
it
be in
is.
their inclusion class, but then they would be pulled to do Wharton Gillingham or Wilson or whatever that they needed to get that intensive reading.
Great, and that's for that's for
High school too, elementary, middle, and high school. Yes, we have Wilson here at the high school.
Great, that's great. I wasn't sure that
No,
was
it's
happening.
right
That's
through,
terrific.
yes.
I'm glad they're getting
Yeah, they
teachers
are.
who are certified.
I've learned a lot about this district in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Terrific. I think that's it
Okay.
for my questions. Thank
Okay.
you.
I just have a couple for you, Sheila. I'm sorry, you're not quite finished yet. So one thing that I'm looking at when I look at students with disabilities is thinking through the possibility, and I don't know if this is possible. It may just be a suggestion, and perhaps for Michelle when she comes in, but I think what's interesting for the school committee to understand is what, generally speaking, the types of disabilities that we're looking at. Are they physical, social, emotional, or learning disabilities? And so if we could perhaps in the future maybe mention this to Michelle, that would be helpful data for us.
I would agree with you that it would be nice to be able to look and say, yes, there are, 60 students, and these are the categories that they fall in. And that's very easy to start tracking.
Excellent.
Very
Thank
easy.
you.
Make a note of that.
And I can
Thank
talk
you.
to Becky about the spreadsheet.
Excellent. I think that would be really helpful, and I think that helps us inform needs,
And hiring.
policy decisions,
Right.
hiring, budget
Absolutely.
expenditures, things like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yep.
thank
No,
you.
That's very easy to do.
And then this is, your intro and extra for the the report. I'm just curious from your perspective. Two questions, really. One, is the evaluation process, the reevaluation, that's not the only time evaluations are happening on whether or not we are meeting the needs for this child, correct?
Teachers are constantly assessing the students,
Yeah.
the way, as they do in the gen ed class.
Yeah.
So they're taking part in those assessments. And there are times when people, very quickly can say, they're not getting enough. We have to reconvene the team,
Yeah.
and they need more, or they need less.
Yes.
But no, assessment is an ongoing thing
Great.
throughout the district.
I think that's important
Yeah.
for people to understand, that there's a finger on the pulse of the progress
Yes.
of the student, and that we're constantly evaluating
And
whether or not
teachers
we're
have
meeting.
reams of data on every student,
Okay.
gen ed and special ed.
And then here's a softball. What do you think we as a district could be doing better to support special needs students and families?
I think you do I'm not just, I really think you do a nice job, and you have some excellent teachers. Get more people out to the snack tomorrow night. We
Yeah.
like to see more people. I think you're doing, transition, that 18 to 22-year-old population is difficult in every district. Because it's a growing population. Parents are keeping their students, their young adults in school even longer.
That's really great to know.
So that's a growing area for Nantucket and for every district,
Great,
because we need more for those students.
great.
Can I take a shot at that
Yeah,
question?
please, for sure.
I think one thing that we've talked about, and the sooner the better, is universal preschool. We have a lot of children in this community who don't go to preschool because of any number of reasons. And that will help us with that early identification and early service. So in my opinion, that is something. The other thing that we need to do is, and we've talked about it with the administrative team a little bit and with Sheila, is a lot of the special educators, not all, but a lot of the special educators in our district come to us without having gone through a special education program, a very specific program in college. They came to it secondhand.
Adapted, grew into it.
You know, and so they have the passion and the nurturing and the caring, but some of the pedagogy and the classic training, we need, I think all schools need to do a better job of that, because recruitment anywhere for special educators is hard. Recruitment on this island for that population of teachers is that much more difficult. So for me, you know, it's helping those educators who come into special education from a different route be stronger in their.
Great.
You know.
And I would just, thank you, Mike, and I would just, if none of us can attend the SAC meeting tomorrow, you know, I think at some point Heidi was going to come present, and then it felt like that maybe there wasn't that much
Right.
to report, but please extend our welcome to
will,
her
absolutely.
to come to us at any point and request to be on the agenda, because
They
I
want to
think,
tour the new building.
good.
But my question is directed towards Mike, I guess. What can we do to encourage that universal pre-K? I mean, if the state doesn't make it mandatory, we
Right.
can't.
You know, I would say we do a couple things, and some that we're doing. We've added a teacher in the pre-K program. We're trying to get private preschools to come into the public school and use that space, and so that we can expand programming for children. And at some point, I think that Nantucket will have to do the right thing, whether it's mandated by the Department of Education or not. We weren't mandated to do full-day kindergarten, but we do full-day kindergarten because it's the right thing to do. And
My next question was, will it be full day pre-K?
you know, that's a good question, and I think you'd get a lot of different answers from people on that. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I wouldn't have said that we need full-day kindergarten. But I think times have changed, and the lives of children and their parents have changed. And unfortunately, you know, kids aren't going home to Ozzie and Harriet. You know, with a stay-at-home mom who's there at the end of a half-day program. If that were true, then I would tend to say a half-day program would be better. But given that that's not happening, then I think we look at the programming in the schools. We can do it better than. And there's some wonderful private programs out there, and I don't mean to. I'm not targeting them. I'm targeting the children
Right.
who don't have an opportunity to go to those.
I think we all know the waiting lists for some of those
Right.
private
Right.
programs are so long that not enough kids just simply can't get access.
Right.
Any other questions, Sona? Okay. Thank you so much,
But then I'm
Sheila.
on again for student support.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I was about to say.
Very quick.
Thank you, goodbye. But hello again.
The Student Support Services team, they meet the first Tuesday of each month from 12 to 1, and Mr. Kozart, the principals, assistant principals, guidance, community mental health, behavior specialists, social workers, people, representative of the police department, and the purpose is to support and maintain an emotionally healthy school and community environment. So it's a very collaborative group of people, and working particularly with Fair Winds and the programs that they bring in during this to the community and to the school. So it's a very collaborative effort, and I'm impressed within the high school, within all the schools in this district, the number of guidance counselors and social workers that you have. They're there to not only provide student support, they're there to consult with the teachers to make sure that kids are getting what they need, and they do a lot of advocacy and referral and outreach to the families, to the students, and to the staff, and crisis intervention, consults, and every 2 weeks there's a team at the high school that meet and discuss individual students and what can we put in place. And it's not always for a behavior type thing. It's like Johnny's got this medical condition, the nurse is there, we can sit around and come up with what can we do to help Johnny. So there's a lot of really good supports here in the district.
Pauline, you serve on that subcommittee. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, at the last meeting I had mentioned that we had discussed here about having a subcommittee on substance abuse issues, and I know that's something that that group is also discussing and looking at curriculums. Is there anything that you can share on that?
We didn't meet this month because everybody thought that we needed to take a step back, look at the group, and come up with where it's going in the future. So that's one of the things we'll discuss. Yes, for June.
Yep.
Having attended a few meetings myself in the past year, I would say I'm very impressed with how that one meeting helps keep the flow of communication open between different agencies and the school. And I think that's one of the strongest assets we have in making sure that we're providing adequate services for our students is that everyone's on the same page and having a good dialogue.
And we know what they can offer us.
Right. It's a really essential meeting group in my mind.
And a nice wide agenda, I think, a broad agenda, which has been, pleasant.
Any comments from over here? Okay, well, thank you again,
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila. Okay, and Martin, will invite you up for the third quarter budget update and the food services update. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm sorry. Good evening. The third quarter update, you've probably seen. Expense-wise, the public school is at the almost similar percentages as last year. Expenses have increased by $442,000, a little over that amount. Payroll has increased a little over $436,000, but those are all in line with contractual obligations and at the time of the year we are at this moment, so there is not much fluctuation there. Of course, presenting on May 16th, this is halfway through the fourth quarter. We are already in end of year preparation. We have been for the past month and a half. Most departments, all departments actually, we work together to see what the needs will be for the rest of the year. Purchase orders are submitted, and by the end of March, I pretty much get an idea of what we have available and how to the funds will be expended by the end of the year. So everything has gone smoothly so far, so there is nothing much there. In the community school, the revenues have increased year over year comparatively by over $129,000. Without the public appropriation increase, that's about $14,000 increase, which we think will probably stay throughout the fourth quarter. Expenses, however, have grown by over $187,000, and as of today, we have discussed this with Caitlin as well. We forecast there will be a deficit in the community school of up to probably $75,000. The reason being the increase in health insurances, the purchase of the vehicle, and contractual obligations, new employees brought in the community school, and things like that. So we do have a substantial fund balance left, and we believe that for next year we have done a much closer forecast for the health insurance benefits. Those have been a challenge. Mm-hmm. They're just growing, and you never know. Just to explain, with budgeting, when you're budgeting, you don't know what new employees will choose, what their family situation will be. So those are kind of unknowns. I'm not, or some of the reasons, but again, the growth has been greatly, unanticipated. At these high percentages. It's been in double digits for the past 2 or 3 years. The WE waivers program, what you see here is over $170,000 in revenues and expenditures and purchase commitments of over $230,000. The revenues have greatly caught up. Today we're at $223,000 of revenues brought in from tuition. So that program, we don't anticipate to have any issues closing the fiscal year. It will close within the budget that we have set up, and it has been very successful and a great help to the community. So.
And that finishes at the end of the fiscal year?
It finishes at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. It will transfer over. There is another entity that will take over the program with a different name, I believe. The school lunch program, I briefly mentioned when we discussed the new contract with Chartwells that was approved at the last meeting, is at the end of the March at a deficit of $480. It's a tremendous improvement over the previous fiscal year, and it has been mostly driven by calculated reimbursements due to the increase in percentages and numbers of the free and reduced students. By 8% they have increased in the last fiscal year. Sales, meal counts, I always like to report those. They have increased over 14,000. We've had 5 days extra in operation in fiscal year 17 as compared to 16. But the average daily sales in dollar amounts have increased by $331 as well. I also would like to report that as of the end of April, which we've already received the report from Chartwells, the negative is around $14,000, very much within what we've budgeted for a subsidy, which is a little over $55,000.
That's great. It's such wonderful progress over the past 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I've just seen it for 2 years, and it has improved dramatically year over year. So it's
great. Any comments or questions for Martin? Okay.
I mean, the deficit has always been a huge drag on the system, and I think for a variety of reasons, that improvement is much sought after, and that's a tremendous job.
Well, it means that we can spend those funds on programs for children instead of to cover that deficit. So that's always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Well, hunting out for free and reduced, I think, is important because those kids are out there and it's something they're entitled to, but it's just got to become aware of it.
Just a quick question, though.
Sure.
Did I hear you say that the $75,000 deficit is that covered?
Yes, we have it covered. We have more than sufficient fund balance in the community school. All the revolvers share one fund balance, and there is sufficient balance there. It's unfortunate that we end up in a deficit. Of course, this is never a positive, but I believe in our conversations with Caitlin, with Mike as well, we believe that next year that issue will be resolved. It all depends always on revenues, because that drives the performance of these revolving accounts, and they've been improving, just not to the extent to catch up with the expenses.
Could I just ask a question? Do we also have the rent for the Candlewick Corner in that?
It's included in this budget, yes. But
substantial, is it? No?
It's $64,000, but we did get this year the transfer from of $65,000 from the capital article for that purpose. So
that's not contributing to the deficit.
To the deficit this year. This was contributing to the deficit last year, because last year we had to pay it and it wasn't covered.
Right.
But this year and next year there is approved transfers of $65,000 in addition to our $400,000 public appropriation for that purpose.
Do you know, just off the top of your head, I know it used to be an 80-20, 20% was covered by town appropriation, 80% of that budget was brought in by program fees. Is that still similar percentage? I don't mean to put you on the
We can
spot.
share that. That was part of the budget presentation, and there was a slide that showed what that was, and I can put that back out to
I'm
you.
just curious to see how
Um,
that may have
yeah.
separated or changed over.
Do you mean budget-wise or actual, for actual
Well,
amount?
actual, I mean, it used to be that 20% cover of the town appropriation covered the budget, and 80%, the remainder had to be brought in by program fees, and that's always an unknown, because you have you rely on being able to have availability, to be able to have programs, to be able to bring the money in.
I think
So
it's
just
grown
wondered.
by, my estimate off the top of my head would be it's about a third now, and 2/3 raised by,
Do we need the fraction thing up?
but I can,
The popsicle sticks.
Put Zona in charge of
I can send that out.
It's pretty close estimate what
Zero is
Mike
correct.
said. Even right now where
It's 400.
I believe it's 1,252,000 as of today. We've brought in revenues total, of which 465 is around a third.
Okay, I'd like to
Sure.
know where we are.
Jen, did you have any questions? or
No,
comments?
thank you very much, Martin.
I like
Thank
that,
you.
didn't you, Zona?
Thanks.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a new policy, just for discussion tonight, Mike?
No, I
No,
think this
for
is the
adoption?
second time, so we
Okay.
can move for adoption. I
Okay,
think.
wonderful. So this is policy CL, administrative reports. Would you or anyone else like to talk about this, introduce it? This is a totally new policy, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Are there any comments or questions on this from committee members?
What are conditions of efficiency? I mean, that's so non-specific. I don't know.
Well, I think we might want to ask Jen and Zona since they are policy subcommittee members.
Unfortunately, I missed that meeting. It's all on you, Zona.
It's whatever they are, in whatever category. It's just that he has a responsibility to make the report to us. It's a policy that was out, that we didn't have in our book, that could have been
Okay.
out there before.
Okay.
And I just thought it was a good idea to
Okay.
we thought.
Okay, well, I will ask for a motion to approve policy CL, administrative reports.
So,
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor? And any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. Mike, it would be wonderful if perhaps you gave us a little introduction before we move to the vote on the
Educator evaluation.
Please.
Okay. I think you know that the new educator evaluation system came in several years ago. We have been working very hard, the administrative team and a group of teachers. It's been a very a wonderful and collaborative effort with both groups pulling together to change our system. You may remember that if you've been in the district for a while, 10 years ago, I'm going to say, there were pockets in which nobody was being evaluated. And that was a concern, obviously, and rightly, for the school committee. And this has helped tighten that up. And people are being evaluated consistently and with the same tool, and it's being duly recorded. The purpose of evaluation, I think we all know, is to improve instruction. And so I think it's a good system. There's a rating system attached to it that was not there years ago. So I think for our district in particular, it's been helpful, but it hasn't been easy. I think it's very challenging both for the teacher and for the administrators to make sure that they're getting in and getting the level of feedback for the teachers. The focus of the system really is on new teachers or those teachers that are struggling. Everybody is evaluated, but the bulk of an administrator's time you want to be spent on those two groups. So after we've actually implemented the system even before it's been approved. The teachers and administration agreed to implement it. So we've been doing that for a couple of years, and we finally finished the document and are ready to present it to you. So we're kudos to a team, of I should have written out the names of the people, and Paige Martineau has spearheaded it from the teachers, but Tracy Maylou helped me, principals, Dee Dee Avery,
Francie Basket.
Alice Crowley at the middle school. So
Great.
it's been a great group, and we've hammered and through it, and I think it puts us in much
Particularly
better
pleased to see it.
situation.
Do you have any questions on it, Jen?
No, I think
Okay.
it's so important for our district to have this. There are no surprises for anyone. So thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I have a question, Mike.
Sure.
Does this cover, for example, nurses or the guidance people?
Yes. It includes all professional staff, occupational therapists, counselors, nurse, librarian, and it's very comprehensive. We are still working on tweaking the format of the evaluation for some of those groups. The nurses' evaluation should look a little different than the teacher's evaluation. So we're still working on that. It's, again, collaborative effort. I think we'll have a better document for each of those groups as well.
Zona, did you have a question or comment? Okay.
I have one other quick question. I'm sorry. Where is this? Is this going to be on our website? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
It will be on the website. It will be part of the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And, the teachers have had this document in draft form. We've worked very hard at the beginning of every year to bring new staff in and help them understand their responsibilities here. And we have every administrator go through a training as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so sorry,
One
Mike.
more question, Mike. Have the teachers voted on this?
They, I think, voted on it on Tuesday. I haven't heard, but I would imagine that vote,
The contract will be opened and that inserted?
this will be inserted
Inserted,
to
yeah.
that
Okay.
document.
Can I just ask a
Sure,
question?
of
which
course.
You just jogged my thought. With so many new administrators coming on board, I remember when I was in the district that all of the administration had to go off to mandatory training when this first came out. Will you
Yep.
be sending the new administration?
Yes and no. Michelle Brady and Eve Marie McNeil are working in Massachusetts school districts, and this is based on a Massachusetts model, so their learning curve will be much less, and Kelly Cooney as well, the director of EL services. So the two people who will need further training will be Elise Gaglin, who will be the assistant principal. She's coming in from Arizona. So we'll have her go through a training program. And Jen Saradelis, who it was announced today will be our new high school assistant
Excellent.
I missed that.
principal, will go through a training, although having gone through it as a teacher, she is intimately
Aware.
aware of it.
Can I say congratulations?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, congratulations on it. So I will entertain a motion to approve the Nantucket Public School System's Educator Evaluation Collective Bargaining Contract language.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. I'd like a motion to approve a gift donation from Liz and Bo Almodovar to the NHS gift account for NHS Woodshop of $1,250.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Vote to approve gift donation from Nantucket Admiralty Association to the NHS gift account for the NHS woodshop of $1,500.
Move approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to approve a gift donation from Cape and Islands Workforce Investment Board to NHS activity account from the NHS Robotics Club for $500.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I will
Any opposed?
Recusing from the next two.
Wonderful, thank you, Pauline. Motion to approve a gift donation from Egan Maritime Institute to the CPS Student Activities account for $2,025.
Move approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion to approve a gift donation from Egan Maritime Institute to the CPS Student Activities account for $455.
Move approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion to amend policy CBI, the evaluation of the superintendent. I'll entertain a motion to approve and then open it for discussion once we have a second.
Second.
Okay, we've seen this before?
You haven't seen this one. This is a rewrite by Mask. It actually is very similar, although the wording is not exactly the same.
Okay.
So,
But you all have reviewed it? Great. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Doesn't this have to come to a second reading?
an amendment we haven't. When it's a new policy,
Okay.
we have. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we were unanimous. There were no opposition. Great, thank you. And then motion to approve the May 2nd meeting minutes.
We do have comments and amendments if you, do we want to
Yep.
first second it and then we'll have
Sure,
discussion?
that would be
Okay, so I'll
great.
second.
Wonderful. And then, I'm sorry, Pauline, do you want to note the changes you noticed?
I would just like to note for Kiera, Bruce, and Brian would be the seniors. In Mr. Vaselli's class, I think I forget the line item on that right now. Michael is.
I think it was 19. That's somewhere in there.
Is a junior.
Yep.
And then just on, is it 137, 136, under the subcommittees and acknowledgements, I had reported that I was a member of the Student Support Service and that I didn't feel, my recommendation to the committee was not to form a separate substance abuse subcommittee.
Great.
And that I would be representing and be able to report out as that continued.
Wonderful. And you emailed, if I'm not mistaken,
I did. I
corrections
emailed
to
Logan.
We did.
Wonderful. So those will be reflected. Any further comments on the minutes? Great. So we have a motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you. And the transfers and invoices. Could I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. Mr. Kozort, your report, please.
Just two quick things to report. The school committee had asked for an update on strategic planning. The administrators and I spent some time at the retreat talking a little bit about strategic planning, and we want to begin with what is called a SWOT, S-W-O-T, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and analysis. We intend to bring somebody in from the outside, an outside facilitator, so that I can be a participant instead of just the facilitator. I have reached out to the listserv for the superintendent's organization. I have about a dozen recommendations that have come back to me from across the Commonwealth, and I will give a few people a call and then engage, and then we hope sometime in July we'll start with the administrative team and then follow up with that same SWOT analysis for the school committee.
Great. Great.
So we're moving forward on that. On the horizon, we're in pretty good shape. I will point out that at the first June meeting, We'll have an enrollment update, and we usually have an athletics annual report and a technology annual report. The wellness, the ELL update will wait until the second meeting in June, not the first.
Great.
If that's
It's totally
works
fine.
for you guys. And there's been a little bit of information on the Sparks Road, Bartlett Road. I've shared some with you, and that's starting to gain discussion. And I got a map from Mike Burns on what that might look like if and when that goes through. He has said that he will come and talk to the school committee when the time is right.
Perfect. Mike, as we are voting on the very generous gifts we receive, just about every committee, there seem to be at least half a dozen. I'm wondering if it would be possible sometime in July or August to sort of get a previous fiscal year report on the total donations received to gift accounts, just so we have a large acknowledgement and figure to understand that. Thank you so much, Martin. And one question I wanted to ask the committee and Mike, last summer we had a retreat workshop for committee members. Is that something that we'd like to entertain doing again this year, or did you have an alternative?
No, I think, I think a retreat is always a great opportunity to talk in a more informal atmosphere. I referenced the administrative retreat. In our case, with actually 5 now new administrators joining the administrative team, we had 3 of the 4 attend. As you know, Elise Gaglin came all the way from Arizona to join, and Eve Marie from Franklin, Mass, and Kelly Cooney from, I think, Southbridge, Western Mass. And then Michelle Brady couldn't, unfortunately. But I think for the administrative team, and they can speak for themselves, I'm sure, but I think it's a great opportunity to talk about the issues without the clock ticking the way that it does for an hour meeting or even a 2-hour meeting. You can keep going. And as I said to the group, I don't expect that we'll come out finished with a topic, but you can have more conversation. And for the new staff who are now on a first name basis with us, they can come in on July 1st and hit the ground running and have some relationships. So I think that it was particularly valuable. This particular retreat was really more about the academic side of issues. But we talked about homework, and we talked about grade reporting, and we talked about ed-eval, and on and on. For the school committee, I think it's a great opportunity to sit around and have a list of issues and a little bit more of a free-flowing conversation than sometimes it can be when you're, watching the clock at the end of a school committee meeting or you're on TV.
I think you're absolutely right, Mike, and I find it really helpful to do something before we're going into our budget directives and goals for the coming year, to do it in that time frame so we can have a little bit of priority conversation around that. So if everyone is okay with that idea, then I'll start to work with Mike and Logan to pick a date and figure out how best to organize that.
It might be a great opportunity to bring somebody to do that SWOT. That could be the focus.
That could be the focus, absolutely. Fantastic. So we'll just keep that conversation
I'd
going.
like it in Hawaii, please.
So would I.
Like, so that it wasn't in.
Wonderful. Are there any other subcommittee work groups, policy, Nantucket Education Trust?
We said we would just give an update that Nantucket Education Trust meets dutifully every month. We are actually going to go to a schedule of every other month We're in the process of bringing on new members. Currently, the school administration that represents is our Superintendent Mike Kozord and Caitlin Waddington, Director of Nantucket Community School. I am the school committee rep. And then we have other community members, but we have a few people that are rotating off. We're happy to report that we are in a position that we are able to put out requests for funding for public school programming. Part of our mission is to support programs that might not necessarily be able to be supported within the school budget. We've supported students to do research projects with scallop through the scallop industry for a couple of years now through Mariah Mitchell. We've helped support this Summer Boost program. We also helped support the French trip, the high school French trip when they took that a couple of years ago. And we have a couple of program requests sitting in front of us right now. But it's a great position to be in to not only support the housing, the 12 units at Cow Pond Lane, but also to be able to now start looking at programs that we can broaden that are not necessarily in the school budget. So,
Pauline, is the priority for the rental units go to teachers or administrators in terms of the market availability of those units?
it's always been a priority for the school. When it first was, the units were first built, there was discussion about having, we held a lottery for the first 12 tenants. And that was at a time when housing was strapped and it was not easy to find units, and we were going through, I think we were 100% then with teachers. And if you remember about 7 years ago, and it seems hard to believe now, but we actually had a housing lull, and we had 2 units that were open many months. And so we needed to broaden that mission for housing, and so we brought in town employees. So currently, we're just over 50% on school employees. We have town employees, and then we opened it up to hospital employees, and then I think we have 1, maybe 2 at large.
Okay.
It is important, even though I say that we are in a position financially to be able to go back to our original mission, which was to support student programs. It's been a tough road for Nantucket Education Trust, and we have needed to have those units full 100%, and we felt a little bit short for a number of months, and I'm happy to say that we've enjoyed full capacity, and we've got great tenants, and we're very proud to be able to provide housing for a large percentage of teachers, and we've had, I think, 7 teachers who have lived at the units who have been able to go on and buy their own homes. So that's really, I think, part of our success story.
Well, the thing is that was all done with private money, and so you do have to meet the mortgage.
We do.
And that we also spent $100,000 on the stain in the ground, the Indian Longhouse, for which Nantucket Educational Trust did not get credit from the woman that wrote an article about it. And I called her on it.
Are you part of the financial formula for NET also, I assume, has some funding set aside for capital maintenance, repairs, and things like that?
Yep, we've got reserves for maintenance as well as other ongoing programs.
So that's
everything is split into different accounting groups, so that our children's programming is set aside.
Great. I think that's really wonderful for the community to understand that really this is a gift that will, well maintained, will, when the mortgage is paid off, I think Mike is very quick to always say this, when the mortgage is paid off, will yield great benefit for the district in expansion and supportive programming.
And I think it's important that we give a shout out to Bob Little, because Bob has been on there, I think, from the beginning when Mr. McFarland started this with our superintendent, and he has been the president for many years, and I think we're hoping that we can give him a bit of a break coming up.
Good.
But he's really hung in there.
Well, please pass on our gratitude to Bob at the next meeting.
I will do.
Any other questions or subcommittee reports?
Policy's meeting tomorrow morning, and we'll be discussing or reviewing policy D and reviewing our self-evaluation and looking at ways to improve our evaluation for next year.
Great.
And dress code, we met last week, and we decided to slow down a little bit and not rush into a survey or a forum, but have the school councils really dig deep into our policy on dress code and become very specific, and then make sure that we do some serious enforcement of our dress code policy.
Great.
And see how that unfolds before we take the next step.
Excellent.
One more just comment.
Oh,
if I may.
sure,
We're gonna
sure.
wrap up.
Well, I had a couple of quick comments too, but
One other thing, and I just wrote a note. When we had Mr. Vaselli do his presentation with his students last meeting, he made a mention of Bill Tanavish and Don Allen and the offer that they put out to his students. I happened to run into Bill soon after that meeting, and I asked, did I truly understand that you came in and offered every student in that class a job if they found something within your industry that they were interested in? And he said, absolutely. And I said, so you hire them after school and on weekends? He said, absolutely. And we will also help support their education if they decide. I think that that is absolutely outstanding, that a business would do that. And I wanted to ask the school committee the permission to see if there is something that would be appropriate to recognize Mr. Tanavish, maybe at the end of the school year, to thank him for that. I mean, I know we have tremendous support from many businesses in terms of donations and everything, but I just feel that that is above and beyond. He's got several students out there working. So I just wondered if maybe there's a recognition at the end of school, if it's the luncheon for the teachers at the end, if that would be appropriate to have him come and just say thank you, or I'll leave it to you, but I just would like to make that recommendation.
I'll talk to the administrative team and we'll find some appropriate way.
Great. Thank you, Pauline. I just wanted to note that I am a parent of a junior, so I attended the great workshop certifying my husband and I as being very knowledgeable in Massachusetts state law around providing drugs and alcohol, particularly alcohol, to students. All right.
You didn't learn how to provide.
No. I learned that I shouldn't. You're right. Can't, won't. Good point, Pauline. So I wanted to thank Dr. Bucky for bringing that program back and to ASAP, obviously to the district attorney's office for traveling down. If I recall, it was kind of a windy night and I bet it was not a pleasurable boat trip back. So it was obviously it's well attended because it's a requirement, but the information was delivered very succinctly. It was a half an hour, some powerful, and I also wanted to extend our thanks to Chief Pittman because I thought that his presentation at the end was some of the more powerful, relating it directly back to our community and our kids and how our police department is really a community partner in taking care of our kids. So thank you for that, and I hope that there's no more hiatuses for that. And then I just thought we could take a quick moment to recognize this is that period of time for, I thought I saw 13 days left for seniors, and I'm sure that Sierra, I hope we get her for one more meeting to acknowledge her, but
I think we will.
I hope so. But can you just remind us quickly of the schedule, the graduation schedule? Thursday is baccalaureate.
Yes.
Okay.
We have academic awards that Monday night.
Okay.
At 6, and we have graduation practices on Tuesday and Thursday at 10 o'clock. We'll have senior ball on Thursday evening.
The 8th, yep.
And baccalaureate on Friday evening. And then graduation, what time is graduation?
Sorry, it's 2.
Be careful, because this is going out to the community.
Graduation is 2 o'clock on Saturday, June 10th.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
It's a busy week, but a fun week.
Busy and
Lots to
fun.
celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just nice, I think, for the community to get a heads up and a reminder on when that is. Okay, are there any other further comments or questions? Fantastic. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you so much.
Aye.
Thank you.
No, I went nuts because